CEO saw a homeless woman risk everything, then his life was never the same again. The rain hammered against the sidewalk like bullets, each drop exploding into fragments against the unforgiving concrete. Emily pressed herself deeper into the narrow alleyway, her thin jacket doing little to shield her from the October storm that seemed determined to wash away what remained of her hope. She clutched the crumpled $5 bill in her pocket, her only money for the next 2 days, and wondered how her life had unraveled so completely. 3 months ago, she'd been saving lives in the emergency room. Now she was barely surviving on the streets, invisible to a world that had once called her a hero. That's when she saw him. An elderly man collapsed just 20 feet away, groceries scattered across the wet pavement like broken dreams as he clutched his chest, gasping for air. People hurried past, umbrellas tilted forward, eyes averted from someone else's crisis. But Emily couldn't look away. She'd never been able to turn from suffering, not even when it meant risking everything she had left. Without hesitation, she bolted into the punishing rain, her worn sneakers splashing through puddles that reflected the neon signs of a city that never stopped moving. She dropped to her knees beside the stranger, her hands already moving with the precision of someone who'd spent years fighting death in sterile hospital corridors. "Sir, can you hear me?" His face was ghostly pale, lips tinged with the blue of oxygen deprivation. "Someone call 911, she shouted to the crowd, but the umbrellas kept moving like a river of indifference around an island of crisis. Emily's hands shook, not from the cold that was seeping through her bones, but from the familiar weight of holding someone's life in her palms. The CPR class from 3 years ago, back when she had an apartment, back when her biggest worry was making rent on time, flooded back to her with crystal clarity. "Stay with me," she whispered, positioning her hands on his chest with the muscle memory of 1,000 emergencies. "I've got you." From across the street, Daniel Richardson watched the scene unfold like something from another world. He ducked under a coffee shop awning when the downpour started, his expensive suit protected from the rain that was now soaking through the homeless woman's threadbare clothes. He pulled out his phone to call for help, but something made him pause. The woman's movements were precise, determined, fearless. She pressed her mouth to the stranger's lips, breathing life into his lungs before resuming chest compressions with a rhythm born of experience. Rain streamed down her face like tears, but her focus never wavered. She was fighting death itself in the middle of a busy street, and she was doing it completely alone. In that moment, Daniel saw something he hadn't witnessed in years of boardroom battles and corporate negotiations: pure, selfless courage. This woman had nothing. He could see that in her worn clothes, her too thin frame. Yet she was giving everything she had to save someone she'd never met. Daniel stepped into the rain, his $1,000 shoes splashing through puddles without hesitation. "I called 911, he said, kneeling beside her. "They're coming." Emily looked up, meeting his eyes. Even through the storm, he could see the fierce determination burning there, a light poverty hadn't extinguished. "Help me count," she said, returning to compressions. 1, 2, 3. Together they worked in rhythm. Daniel watched this woman pour everything into saving a life. Her lips purple from cold, but she wouldn't stop. Suddenly, the old man coughed, his eyes fluttering open. Emily sagged with relief. "You brought him back," Daniel said softly. The paramedics took over, and one approached Emily afterward. "Your quick thinking saved his life." Emily wrapped her arms around herself as the adrenaline faded. She watched the ambulance disappear into the storm. "Here." Daniel held out his jacket. "You're freezing." "I'm fine," Emily said, but her chattering teeth betrayed her. "Please," he insisted. The jacket was warm and smelled like expensive cologne. I'm Daniel, he said, extending his hand. Emily. Her grip was firm despite the trembling. Can I buy you some coffee to warm up? Emily hesitated. She'd learned to be wary of kindness from strangers, but something about this shared experience felt different. Okay, she said quietly. The coffee shop was warm and inviting, a sanctuary from the storm that had brought two strangers together in the most unexpected way. Daniel ordered 2 large coffees and pastries, his heart aching as he noticed how Emily's eyes lingered on the food display with the careful control of someone who'd learned to hide their hunger. I can't finish all this myself, he said casually, though he could see the hollow look in her cheeks that spoke of too many missed meals. The way she accepted the food with dignity intact told him everything about the kind of person she was. As Emily wrapped her trembling hands around the warm cup, Daniel found himself studying her more intently. There was something magnetic about her, an intelligence that poverty couldn't diminish, a grace that circumstances couldn't steal. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. There was a strength radiating from her that drew him in like gravity. That was incredible, what you did back there, he said, meaning every word. Emily shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. Anyone would have done the same. No, Daniel said firmly, thinking of the 20 people who'd walked past without stopping. They wouldn't have. I watched them all choose to look away. She stared into her coffee as if searching for answers in its depths. I couldn't just leave him there, you know? Daniel knew. He'd built an empire worth billions, made decisions that affected thousands of lives, commanded respect in boardrooms across the globe. But he'd never felt as purposeful as he had kneeling in that rain beside her, following her lead in fighting for a stranger's life. Can I ask how long you've been on the streets? Emily's jaw tightened, and for a moment Daniel thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of dreams deferred and dignity tested. 3 months. She looked up at him, defiant despite her vulnerability. Lost my job as a nurse when the hospital downsized. Couldn't make rent. One thing led to another, and here I am. A nurse. The revelation hit Daniel like a lightning bolt, suddenly explaining everything. Her quick thinking, her precise movements, the way she'd taken charge in that life or death moment. This woman had dedicated her life to healing others, had probably saved countless lives in sterile hospital rooms, and the system had discarded her like she was disposable. Daniel felt something twist in his chest, a burning anger at a world that could let someone so valuable, so fundamentally good, fall through the cracks. Here was a person who embodied everything he'd once believed about making a difference, and she was struggling to survive while he lived in luxury. I'm sorry, he said simply, knowing the words were inadequate, but meaning them with every fiber of his being. Emily shrugged, but he caught the flash of pain that crossed her features before she masked it. Life happens. People like me, we're expendable when budgets get tight. I'll figure something out. I always do. She thought it ended there, a chance encounter, a shared moment of humanity that would fade like the storm outside. But her kindness had already set something greater in motion, rippling outward in ways she could never imagine. Over the following weeks, they fell into a routine that felt as natural as breathing. Daniel would pick Emily up for dinner, and she'd stay in his guest room. He'd insisted after learning about the shelter, claiming he had space and couldn't bear the alternative. It was supposed to be temporary, just until she got back on her feet, but neither of them seemed in any hurry to change the arrangement. During the days, Emily would search for work while Daniel went to his office, but their evenings belonged to them. They'd cook simple meals together, and Daniel found himself falling for her in 1,000 small ways. The way she saved leftover bread for the pigeons in the park. How she remembered the coffee shop barista's name after one visit. The gentle way she spoke to every person they encountered. One evening, he watched her give her scarf to a shivering child waiting with her mother at a bus stop. Emily came back to him, arms wrapped around herself against the cold, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You gave away your only warm scarf," Daniel said softly. "She needed it more," Emily replied simply, and Daniel felt something shift in his chest. A recognition that this woman's capacity for love was infinite, even when she had nothing left to give. Their conversations grew deeper with each passing day. Daniel shared his loneliness despite success, while Emily spoke about her dreams and the patients who'd touched her heart. But it was in the quiet moments, her hand brushing his as they cooked, the way she listened like his thoughts actually mattered, that Daniel realized he was falling completely, irreversibly in love. "I can't keep doing this," she said suddenly, her voice breaking the spell of the evening. Daniel's heart dropped like a stone. "What do you mean?" "I can't keep accepting your charity. I don't know what you do for work, but you clearly have money, and I have nothing to offer." She wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold the pieces of her dignity together. "It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to me. I need to stand on my own." The word charity hit Daniel like a physical blow. Is that what she thought this was? Some rich man's guilt project? "What if it's not charity?" he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion he'd been holding back for weeks. "What do you mean?" Daniel took a breath that felt like diving off a cliff. "What if I'm falling in love with you?" Emily's breath caught. This kind, thoughtful man was looking at her like she was precious. "I think I'm falling for you too," she whispered. That night changed everything. They sat talking until dawn, sharing dreams and building something that felt unshakable. But Emily still didn't know who Daniel really was, and that secret was about to change everything. The revelation came 3 weeks later. Emily had found a part-time clinic job and was finally rebuilding her independence. Daniel was driving her to work when she noticed the billboard. "Richardson Industries announces $50 million healthcare initiative," she read aloud, "led by CEO Daniel Richardson." She turned to him, confused. "Same name as you. That's funny." Daniel's hands tightened on the wheel. "Emily," he said softly. "That's me." "What do you mean?" "That's my company. I'm Daniel Richardson, the billionaire." The silence was deafening. Emily stared at him, puzzle pieces rearranging in her mind. "Oh my God," she laughed, but there was no humor in it. This whole time, what was this? Some charity project? "No. When I saw you in that rain, I didn't see a homeless woman. I saw someone incredible. I saw you. But you lied to me." Tears streamed down her face. "Every day, every moment I thought we were building something real, you were lying." "Don't minimize what we have," Daniel said desperately. "Don't cheapen what you mean to me." "What do I mean to you?" "Really?" "Everything," he said quietly. "You're the reason I remember why I wanted to help people. You're the reason I've been designing a healthcare foundation. You fell in love with Daniel the man, not Daniel the billionaire. How could I not want to protect that?" "But it's not real, is it? This fantasy we've been living, it's built on a lie. The only thing that's real is how I feel about you. Everything else is just noise." Emily stared out the window. "I need time to think." He drove her to the clinic in silence. As she got out, Emily turned back. That night in the rain, Was any of that real? Every second of it, Daniel replied. That was the most real moment of my life. 3 days passed in silence that felt like an eternity. On Friday evening, Emily appeared at Richardson Tower. Daniel's assistant showed her into his executive suite, the 47th floor with panoramic city views and awards lining the walls. The space screamed wealth and power in a way that made their modest dinners feel like elaborate theater. This is really you, Emily said quietly, taking in the opulent office. This is just where I work. It's not who I am. Emily walked to the window, looking out at the city spread below. 3 days ago, I was angry, hurt, but I kept thinking about that night in the rain. You didn't have to stop. You could have called 911 and walked away. I couldn't leave you there alone. No, you couldn't. And that's who you really are. Not this, she gestured at the office, but the man who knelt in the rain. Daniel stepped closer, hope flickering in his chest. I'm still hurt you didn't trust me with the truth, but I understand why. In your world, how do you know who really sees you? You saw me, Daniel said simply, from the very first moment. And you saw me, not the homeless woman, not the charity case, just me. I have something to show you, Daniel said, his heart hammering. He led her to his conference room, where architectural plans covered the table. Remember your dream? The free clinic? Emily approached slowly, eyes widening as she took in the detailed drawings. Daniel, what is this? New Hope Community Clinic. Fully funded, state-of-the-art equipment, serving anyone regardless of ability to pay. And there's a position for a nurse practitioner. We'd pay for you to finish your degree. Emily's knees gave out. She sank into a chair, staring at her deepest dream, rendered in precise architectural detail. You can't be serious. Daniel knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. I've never been more serious. I love you, Emily. I love your compassion, your strength, your heart that gives without counting the cost. I want to build something beautiful with you. I want to change the world with you. She looked into his eyes, the same eyes that had looked at her with kindness that night in the rain, before he knew anything about her, except that she would fight for a stranger's life. Yes, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Yes to all of it. 6 months later, Emily stood in the lobby of New Hope Community Clinic as the first patients came through the doors. Daniel watched her guide nervous families and comfort worried parents, finally back where she belonged. That evening, they walked through the park where they'd first confessed their love. At the bench where everything had changed, Daniel stopped and dropped to one knee. Emily Henderson, he said, pulling out a ring that caught the streetlights. You saved my life that night just as much as we saved that stranger. You showed me what real wealth looks like, a generous heart that gives without counting the cost. Will you marry me? Emily looked down at this extraordinary man who'd seen her worth when she couldn't see it herself. Yes, she said simply. Yes to forever. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness ripple outward in ways we never expect, touching lives and changing destinies in the most beautiful ways imaginable. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own moments of unexpected kindness in the comments below.